Welcome everyone to The Invisible Edge, a show about the creative minds that shape our culture and the power of empathy. I'm your host Toygar, and today's guest is Mark Seliger, photographer extraordinaire. His lens has shaped our visual culture for the last 3 decades. He's covered everything from rock, country, and hip-hop legends to presidents, artists, and the trans community. From the 90s to just last week, and from editorial and commercial work to fine art projects. There are many amazing photographers who are masters of their craft, but we will explore how he sets himself apart and how he's able to be on top for so long. Welcome, Mark Seliger. You shaped our visual culture for 3 decades.
Well, that's the idea, is that we keep on making pieces and finding stories that we can create to not only inform in an immediate way, but also to, preserve historically.
How many Rolling Stone covers did you do when?
It's about 189.
189. How many assignments for Rolling Stone?
Oh my God, I have no idea.
I looked at that, almost 600.
Probably, yeah. The idea was that no matter how many assignments we had been obligated to a year, we always outdid ourselves. And that was the goal. So I worked for Rolling Stone for 10 years as a chief photographer, between 92 to 2002. And then from 2002 to 2012, I worked with Connie Nashville.
Right. But before we dive into that, I want to ask you a very simple and deep question, is what does empathy mean to you and your work? What does that?
Well, empathy is where it all starts from. The idea that you are at one with your subject. I always tell people that regardless of what the assignment is, who you're photographing, the preemptive work that we do on the front part is the work where you hopefully fall in love with the person or the subject matter that you're photographing. And I think empathy really falls very close in line with the way that I think about that work. And then obviously like the process of a session or of telling a story.
Yeah. I love this so much, how you frame this, to fall in love with the people. And you could apply this almost to every profession, if you will. The question, have you fallen in love with your audience? Because I think there is a difference between knowing stuff rationally and having this emotional understanding for someone.
And it's case by case how I approach a project. I think empathy is the one common thread through everything. Different ways, different paintbrushes that you use.
Take us quickly from Texas to New York and to your first break.
I grew up in the suburbs of Houston. I went to the High School for Performing and Visual Arts. At that point, I started to get a much better understanding about photography, really from the perspective of the darkroom. So printmaking has always been kind of the bite of the apple for me. Everything else was sort of ancillary to even taking pictures. So process became a really early connection to me in photography. In my junior year, I met my mentor, James Newberry, came into the university and kind of changed the curriculum from traditional professional commercial photography techniques to documentary, alternative printmaking, abstract photography, environmental portraiture. I started to find an identification of what kind of portraiture I wanted to do, which was documentary. But it was more documentary portraiture.
Right.
It wasn't journalism. It was more of having a through line in portraiture of a subject matter. Could be a series of portraits, but it could be one portrait that told a complete story. From there, I started to wander into the idea of physiognomy. which is a study of facial expressions. I found there to be an incredibly deep well of a very simple portrait. How to carve that out through printmaking, through lighting, through relationships. And that really became the B-side to the way that I work. So on one hand, I was working in environmental portraiture, and then the other side, I was carving out the simplistic portrait. And then the third line for me was humor. I'd always been a kind of a class clown, right? Like I'd always been the guy that made people laugh. I always found that there was a funny story to be told, even through a contrived theatrical expression in photography. And because of my humorous side, I felt like I could illustrate a funny idea through one picture.
When I see the work, the Rolling Stone work from the 90s, there is high concept, if you will.
Sure.
And there is just, carving out the soul in the portrait.
Absolutely.
With Kurt Cobain, the famous black and white picture, and then the one that you have on the cover with, the doll heads. Was that the same shoot?
Same shoot. There's always the high concept idea that I'm floating around in order to be able to elevate the story. And then there's the portrait for myself, which is the simple portrait. So no matter how far I would take, a concept or a contrived idea, I'd always try to capture the most reductive, simplest portrait. And that was because you never know where you're going to land in an assignment.
I want to go back to, how do you get to the place to fall in love with a subject before you actually are on set?
Well, the process really begins, again, to destination. So understanding your subject means essentially devouring anything that you can find on what it is that you're photographing. And then the magic trick is taking everything that you've just written down and trying the opposite. That's how you can actually tell a story that is unexpected.
Give us some examples.
I would say one of the earliest conceptual experiences I ever had for a big magazine was with the Rolling Stone 25th anniversary. I think there was 5 pretty major photographers, and I was sort of the young buck. So I knew I had a lot to prove, and I was super competitive and super ambitious. My first subject was Fleetwood Mac. It was only 2 of them, though. It was John McPhee and Mick Fleetwood. There was a very whimsical, humorous side to the way that they reacted to each other. There was also like a family that was like very dysfunctional at the same time. So I thought about let's start to dig into the idea of family. Here you have these 2 men, which could be just a very simple portrait of the 2 of them, but what's the ultimate relationship of a 25-year-old relationship? So I thought about, would it be like, what kind of party would it be? Would it be maybe an anniversary party? Would it be like a wild rock and roll party? Or would it be like a wedding? And I thought, a wedding could be kind of interesting. And I talked to my stylist, Ariane Phillips, and she said, I really love the idea. And we decided that it's probably the best to ask Mick Fleetwood to be the bride. So I was getting nervous about the phone call. And I get Mick on the phone and he said, oh, hi, Mark, how are you doing? And I said, hey, Mick, I'm really excited about this shoot. And he goes, well, what's your idea? So immediately I'm like on the spot and I'm just stammering, stuttering, trying to get through it. And I said, well, I want to do this wedding picture of the 2 of you guys. And he goes, oh, and he goes like, can I ask you a favor? And I said, sure. And he goes, can I be the bride? My work was done.
Oh my God. That was very early on.
Yeah, like that portfolio was my lucky break into the Rolling Stone world.
That's a defining shot that you just took us through. Devouring everything and just taking everything in and then flipping and turning it to get something that is so standout. But tell us about one or two more defining shots for you during that period of you being chief photographer. What comes to mind?
Well, one of the more controversial covers we did was pretty close to the LA riots. And the storytelling in hip hop and rap music was starting to inform us of moral injustice. One of the songs was Cop Killer that came out, which was Ice-T's song. Right. And it was hard rock. And it came out and basically he got shut down by his record label. So the cover was going to be Ice-T, and I came up with the idea of him dressed as a cop. And the day that it was going to come out, I get a fax in my office from my editor, Lori Kurtockville, that said, like, amazing cover, but get ready when the shit hits the fan.
I see it in a way when I listen to you. Did your images took Rolling Stone and created this incredible bond with the audience, with the fans?
Yeah.
Because you're so deep in with the subject, if this is whoever celebrity musician it is, but to bring something out that connects so deeply with the fans is extraordinary, because you can take a picture of all of these people and they're like, oh, cool, I like him. If I have the same budget, the same time, the same equipment, and, you know, the result will be very different.
Absolutely.
And I feel like your process ensures a different result.
Part of my philosophy when I work is that I may never work with the subject again. You know, you almost have to desensitize yourself from the photographs that have been taken. So you almost have to be void of that.
When I think of documentary photography, it's almost kind of an empathy engine, because you see something as a photographer and you help me as a viewer to understand that, to feel that.
Yeah, so curiosity is really the kickoff to, any project. You have to obviously be curious enough to go deep with them. Most of the projects that I do that are connected to more of a documentary basis, I tried to have like a transcription or text or some storyline that connects my subject to the photograph, so that the reader or the person that's observing the image does have context. It isn't just purely visceral. There is like some personality built into it. Some things are visceral. Some things are more kind of abstracted. Like The City That Finally Sleeps was really just me being an observer of New York City as it was completely shut down, void of people.
It feels like a story that had to be told when you look.
Well, it was never going to happen. In our lifetime, it probably will never happen again like that, where for 3 months, you could go into any populated area from Times Square down to Chinatown, uptown, didn't matter where you went. And it felt like everybody had left town. I call it like beautiful pain. Yes. It had the cherry blossoms in the street were blooming and the parks were on fire with the coming of spring. And yet it was completely empty. Yeah. So as nature was taking over and changing itself into this new season and life was happening around that, everything else was inside. Yeah. And so there was like a moment of complete rest for the city.
Talk to us about Christopher Street.
The beginnings of Christopher Street, the book Christopher Street, happened when I went to Cuba for a quick photographic trip, just a personal trip. I was going to go walk around in Havana and take pictures. And towards my last day there, I went to a cabaret late at night. So I went to the lake cabaret at the very end of that trip. And we got invited downstairs where a lot of the performers were getting ready to go on stage. And I met one of the performers that was a trans woman, an entertainer, and I photographed her. And as I was boarding the plane, I thought, wow, there's actually a story to be told 2 blocks from my house. So really in my own backyard, right? And I could see the neighborhood for years had been evaporating. Christopher Street, which was once a place I kind of avoided because of the theatrics and the noise, I could see was gentrifying. More tourists, less of people finding their way into New York via Christopher Street, which had really been kind of a home base for a lot of LGBTQ communities since the 60s. I went out one night just as an experiment. I brought 2 different formats with me. I brought a Hasselblad square format film, and I think I had a Pentax, which was more of a handheld 35 2.25. And one of my assistants and I had a little panel light, LED light, and we would stop people on the street and see if we could photograph them. And as I started to talk to these people, it really became apparent to me that this was not just a story about Christopher Street. This was a story about transgender. And that one night I ran into a street worker by the name of Tiny. And Tiny told me just point blank, the reason why I'm working and hustling is because I'm trying to pay for my operation so I can be my true self. That's the story I wanted to tell about, really the struggles, the pain, the triumphs that the people that I was meeting were going through and what they'd been through and how they were coming on the other side and being seen for the first time as their true self.
Coming full circle back to this floor, I've seen walking up here, your series on My Stairwell.
In My Stairwell, yeah.
Talk to us about what that was about and how this came about.
So this was a new place for me. We had disassembled the elevator, which used to be basically an oversized elevator for horses and for carriages. When I took out the cab of the stable elevator, wow, we found this incredible top light, skylight that existed completely untouched with this, brick border around which housed the cab. I built a landing for the staircase, and then I decided that I was going to transform that into a daylight studio. That became our little theater for me in terms of a destination. And I would invite people to come in and be photographed in there over different sessions that I was doing for magazines. That was kind of the final photograph. Say, hey, let's run upstairs and do a picture in the stairwell. In my opinion, it was really like a catalog of artists at that particular time. It ranged from everybody from like a Richard Serra to a Muhammad Ali and a Michael J. Fox. And
that shot, one of my favorites. My dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and when I saw that,
no, my dad too.
Yeah, it really hit me, and it just warmed my heart, and I got like tears in my eyes thinking of my dad, and but seeing that, there's some joy in that. Is that
absolutely? So that's what we were talking about earlier, is flipping something on his head.
Yeah,
I wanted to play into the comedic role of that Michael is so good at.
Yeah.
And Ali, who too is quite a performer. I love the idea of Michael being the boxer, right? The opposite of the way you think about Michael J. Fox. I wanted to connect the two, so I thought, oh, okay, so he's the trainer, he's the boxer. And because of the fight that they were going through, which was the mission to conquer and cure Parkinson's, which was so much about Michael's, foundation and their slogan, is that these two guys were really together on not only for their recovery, but in a much broader sense of science. For me, looking at like August Saunders, looking at Steichen's work, looking at Penn's work, looking at Abaddon's work, gave me a kind of the reassurance that if I had found one space that would be the common link to everybody that went into it, then I could really create very different stories. Somebody like a Philip Glass, right? So I found a little miniature piano. Yeah. And I remember after we did that picture, he goes like, "This has been really special. Thank you for ruining my career."
The whole book is amazing. There's one shot that I love is Cindy Sherman. I think one of my favorite shots ever. I don't think I've ever seen her taking a picture of herself. Yeah. I think the humor that comes with it, it's meta and it's so smart and intelligent. It's just the whole, I'm completely blown away. Talk to me about that one.
Exactly what you said. You've never seen her taking those pictures. You've only seen the pictures, but I was interested in what that picture would be if you saw, the wizard behind the curtain, right? So that was easy. I took a Contax camera. I took the first tripod I ever got. And then, funny enough, about 3 years later, I got to go to her studio and do a story of her studio. And it was just genius what she showed me. She opened up drawers of prosthetics. Yes. One drawer that was just noses, one drawer that was just breasts, one drawer that was just teeth. And I saw exactly what I was trying to say in that image. And that's really, kind of a remarkable experience. But the stairwell was the one destination where all these artists could come into and feel as if I wasn't necessarily creating a world for them, but it was more of a stage. Yeah. Talk about longevity, which is not necessarily common in a field where it is about cultural relevance and about trends and, covers are shaping culture now. You just shot Seth Rogen for his show, and you shaped the 90s with all the covers. So there is like 30 years and you're still doing extremely relevant, pop culture work that is shaping the world we're living in. What allows you to be at that level? At a certain point, you understand how to reinvent yourself, but it's not to the mass public, it's for your own curiosity, how you keep yourself interested. And I'm really lucky because I have a deep affinity for, the simplest form of photography to the deepest sense of, idea. I have to say I've only scratched the surface of it. You're just getting started? I don't know if I'm getting started, but I think it's like a songwriter. You may never be able to write the same songs you did 25, 30 years ago, but you can always write a new song, right? It may have new importance to you because you're informed differently, you're processing differently, you've already experienced certain things that you may not want to repeat. Before we go, 4 questions I have for you. Sure. Quick answers. Who are you dying to shoot that you haven't shot yet? One of the ones that got away was Prince. There was a moment that I was going to shoot and it never happened. Ella Fitzgerald, I would have loved to photograph. But there's subject matters that I'm more interested in doing than I am from celebrities. One of the projects that I'm working on Native Americans is a great understanding of the wisdom that goes along with Native culture. And it's a very selfish spiritual journey that I would like to understand, but really through the eyes of a photographer.
I love your passion. I love your ability to feel that for what it is, bringing it to us who see your images and then feel something is amazing. And it, I can tell it hasn't stopped. Let's go down and see one of my favorite images in person that we haven't talked about yet. Is it okay if we go down to our studio? Perfect. Give us the tour, my friend.
All right, so this is the stairwell. So this used to be an elevator, and then when we disassembled the elevator, we found this beautiful skylight, which turned into my New York atelier.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I remember in those photos you had a wooden floor. Did you change it, or you put
so
that
recently we realized we had 5 feet between the building behind us after they finished this high rise.
Okay.
And so 2 years ago we knocked out an entire wall and we ripped out the floor and we enlarged the
So it was wood before and then you changed
it. This used to end here.
I see it. So which is even, I think for the photos even better, just because it feels tighter.
Yeah. And this is our new gallery.
Oh, you have a gallery.
Yeah.
All right, here's a reveal of the highlight of today.
Yeah, so this picture here was done in the courtyard of the Rose Garden. 20 minutes with Obama. About 7 minutes that we spent on the actual cover and the inside, and then I snuck in a couple of minutes to shoot what I called the diptych. Now, the diptych was my secret weapon in order to be able to get the president to pose for me front and back. I photographed him from the front, and then I said, "Oh, okay, so let's do the back." And he turned around, and I was trying to get the silhouette just perfect of his jacket. So I was being very specific. Put your hands in your pockets, spread your elbows out, look straight ahead. I want you to smile. And then I think he caught the idea when I said to smile. He was like the back of his head. He was going like, "Wait, is this going to make my ears look big?" And I said, "Absolutely not, Mr. President." He goes like, "Okay, that's enough art, Mark." 3 out of the 4 shots were out of focus. I was so nervous.
That's the other thing we haven't spoken about. I think, the preparation and the diligence and so forth. But when you then get on a set and you literally have like 10 minutes, 20 minutes.
Oh my God. Oh, this is, anytime you photographed Obama or a president, you're usually somewhere between 6 to 8 minutes. And it goes by pretty fast.
Oh, that's the Cuba picture that inspired Christopher.
Yeah. When we went into the cabaret, I went downstairs and did that just pretty quick with a little on-camera flash, but that was one that informed me. Just the idea came from coming back and looking at that contact sheet, and I was like, wow, I think there's something really in the streets of Christopher that I need to go out and spend some time doing. Yeah.
Is this here too, Dylan?
That's actually at my that was the apartment before. It was actually an AIR building that I lived in, and that was my loft.
Oh, I see.
And that was in the back of my studio. It was a little air shaft, and Dylan came over to the house and completely unassuming, by himself, buy your clothes, and we did that portrait.
Awesome. Oh, look at it. Oh.
Yeah, this was kind of the start of our Platinum series. And these are the 3 prints that we were talking about.
We were just talking about, yes. This is the dog.
What do you want?
The dog was missing.
What do you want? Look at him. What do you want?
Thank you so much.
Was it everything you wished for?
More than what I wished for. Thank you for your time.
Of course.
Mark Seliger, everyone. Thank you for inviting us.
Come back again.
I will.
I really like your shoes.